I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark. Paradise After Dark is an independent podcast covering true crime,
unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
creepy places, and every now and then an urban legend.
If you'd like to support our show and get a bunch of extra Paradise After Dark content, plus early and ad-free episodes, please sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
And be sure to visit our website for all the other cool things that you can find there. Also on our website, we have a cool little tip jar where you can swing by there and give us a tip, and we'll give you a shout out on the show.
Speaking of shout outs on the show, we just got a tip today, actually, from Heather. Thank you, Heather.
Heather, I'm doing like a big H. How do you make an H? Like you do the YMCA thing? How do you do an H that way?
I don't know.
Okay, anyway. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, so this might sound a little funny to you guys because we are actually recording this episode on Zoom with our special guest, Bob Motta, criminal defense attorney, host of the Defense Diaries podcast. Hi, Bob.
Hey, what's up, Lauren? What's up, Ken? How you guys doing?
Good.
Good, yeah. So we just sort of threw this together super quick because this is sort of breaking news. We were going to talk about Adnan Syed and what's going on with his case.
Who's that? Never heard of him.
I was literally just going to ask Bob, what makes you qualified to discuss this, but
nothing. I have no qualifications. No, that was pretty big news. And I was pretty excited to read about it. But I think probably what makes sense to talk to me is prior to my life as a podcaster, I've been a criminal defense attorney for the past 20 plus years, doing trial work, trying to fight the good fight in there from the defense side of things. So I'm pretty educated on the criminal justice system and the inner workings of such. So I think we're going to have a good time, and hopefully we can give your listeners a little bit of insight into exactly what just happened a couple of days ago. So
yeah, that's exactly what we're looking to do.
Well, there's one thing that I want to point out to having Bob on here is a lot of times people get upset about defense. Like, oh, why would you want to defend that scumbag? But in certain cases, you find that maybe that scumbag is not the person they think they are. They're not the guy that did it. They're not guilty.
Some people are innocent.
Exactly. And sometimes those people are deserving of having someone defend them. And that's what we're talking about kind of tonight. If you think about it.
Not to mention the 6th Amendment of the Constitution.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. You took the words right out of my mouth. That little thing that we all kind of live under called the Constitution kind of matters as well. So every defendant has an absolute right to a trial, and defense attorneys do get a bad rap. I do think that what's going on now through kind of like the help of true crime documentaries and podcasts is that people are starting to realize that all cops are not good, all prosecutors are not good, and that all defense attorneys are not bad. I think that we play an incredibly important role in the criminal justice system. And really what we do more than anything else is we police the police. So, where you get these cases where people are like, oh, he got off on a technicality. I take like huge umbrage with that because they're not technicalities. It's the Constitution. When the cops violate someone's Fourth Amendment rights, when they're conducting a search or a seizure, the only way that we can protect all of us as citizens so that they don't do it all the time is by criminal defense attorneys filing motions to suppress or motions to quash and saying, hey, you know what? You broke the law. And yes, you're going to end up losing the evidence that you collected illegally on that case. And that guy might walk. But if we don't do that, then we're going to be living in a much, much different world, a world that none of us will like at all. We don't want to live in Nazi Germany where they can kick our doors in and search us at will whenever the hell they want. And if their power goes unchecked, which can only be done by defense attorneys, no one else is going to do it. Judges aren't going to do it. The cops sure the hell aren't going to do it. It's got to be defense attorneys. So when people say, oh, we got off on a technicality, think about that next time. That, because those rights are pretty important to all of us. And if people are out there saying, oh, well, I'm not a criminal. Well, you know what? There's a lot of people that get arrested that aren't criminals. So, we need to have those protections. And if we like the way that we live in terms of having, the limited freedoms that we do have, in terms of, because we have to have rules. We don't want to live in a world of chaos. So we have to make rules, and we have to have laws, but we want the cops to abide by the biggest laws, which were created in the Constitution. So that's kind of what we do, and I spend quite a bit of time in my podcast trying to explain to people what defense attorneys really do, because Ken, as you said, that has been something that I've dealt with my whole life, because my dad's a defense attorney, and he defended Gacy. And the number one question that I would get asked is, it like a kid growing up, is, how the hell could your dad represent that guy?
Yeah.
So it was like, I learned over the years how to answer that question properly. So, yeah, but you're right though, and then, yeah, of course, like you have the innocent people that are out there, and there's a lot of them, that just kind of, when cops develop tunnel vision and they land on somebody, which kind of leads us perfectly into Adnan's case. There's a question whether or not he might be one of those guys. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Right. So, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to direct our listeners to the Defense Diaries podcast to learn a lot about police misconduct and the rules of search and seizure and things like that, because you do a really good job with that.
Thanks.
And there's some explosive things that I'm like, what? Like literally, I'm sending Bob Facebook messages like, oh my God.
Yeah, we expose some stuff. And look, I'm no cop hater. I loved the old cops that I was, interviewing in the Gacy season, and the guys who did the job right and that were out there, on the streets, knocking on doors, talking to people, and, investigating the case were great old cops. And, then you've got cops that aren't, that's just, it's like any portion of society. You've got good and bad in every occupation. That's just a fact.
Well, speaking of good and bad, Lauren, I want to kind of open with that, but we kind of need to give some background information on Ednans Case, just in case someone out there is listening and doesn't know, which would be very odd at this point. But
yes, they may have been living under a rock, but
I do want to just remember this point, because I got to ask Bob one opening question that we could sort of get into. It's just something that everything I read brings me right to this question. And I want to ask him once we start. So if you just want to give some background.
Okay, so Paradise After Dark has actually never covered the Adnan Syed case, only because it's just been covered so much. And we're a little podcast. We like to focus on the lesser known cases, the more unsolved cases. But anyway, I put together a little kind of refresher course. So here we go. Adnan Syed is a Muslim American man who was convicted of murdering his ex-girlfriend, Hae Min Lee, in 1999. His case became internationally famous by the podcast Serial in 2014. On January 13th, 1999, 18-year-old student Hae Min Lee left the campus of Baltimore's Woodlawn High School after classes and was never seen again. The following month, a passerby happened upon Lee's body, partially buried in a nearby Lincoln Park. She had been strangled to death. On February 9th, police received an anonymous tip implicating Adnan Syed, Lee's 17-year-old boyfriend, as the killer. Officers arrested Adnan on February 28th of 1999 and charged him with first-degree murder. On February 25th of 2000, Adnan was found guilty of murder, false imprisonment, and robbery, and the judge sentenced him to life plus 30 years. Now, since that time, this case has become an extremely hot topic with two kind of distinct camps, guilty and not guilty. I mean, you can ask anyone in the true crime world, you think Adnan's guilty or not guilty, and most people will fall on one side or the other. Books have been written, documentaries have been made, and not to mention the Serial podcast. Adnan has maintained his innocence the whole time. Baltimore prosecutors filed a motion on Wednesday, September 14th of 2022, which is last week, asking for a new trial. A statement from the state attorney's office cited newly discovered evidence. After a nearly year-long investigation reviewing the facts of the case, Adnan deserves a new trial where he is adequately represented and the latest evidence can be presented, Baltimore City State Attorney Marilyn Mosby said in a statement. The reinvestigation of the case revealed evidence regarding the possible involvement of two alternative suspects other than Syed. The statement said, the two suspects may be involved individually or may be involved together. The state will request that Syed be released on his own recognizance pending the investigation if the motion to vacate his conviction is granted. Now, suspects were known at the time of the original investigation and were not properly ruled out nor disclosed to the defense, according to Mosby's statement. The state is not disclosing the names of the suspect, but said that, according to the trial file, one of them said he would make her, meaning Hae Min Lee, disappear and he would kill her. The investigation also revealed that one suspect was convicted of attacking a woman in her vehicle, according to the statement. The second suspect was convicted of engaging in serial rape and sexual assault. Now, Hae Min Lee's car was located directly behind the house of one of the suspect's family members. The ongoing investigation also found some Brady violations or evidence improperly withheld, which the state said in the filing, quote, robbed the defendant of information that would have bolstered his argument that someone else was responsible for the victim's death. To be clear, the state is not asserting at this time that the defendant is innocent. However, for all reasons set below, the state no longer has confidence in the integrity of the conviction, Assistant State Attorney Becky Feldman wrote in the filing. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay. So with that being said, this is what blows my mind, and this is the question I keep asking myself. I'm sure Bob might be able to help me on this. I'm quite certain. Why would the prosecution even take a second look at this case? I can't figure out why it is they looked at it and said, okay, we've got to change something. We've got to do something. Why would the prosecution do that? Can you answer that, Bob?
So when this thing came down, it blew my mind. You know, one of the big things that I am always bitching about on my podcast, and it's like in any collaboration I've done, you know, the thing that irritates me about state's attorneys and prosecutors is their just absolute refusal to ever admit that they were wrong on a case and that they got the wrong guy. So the long answer is that I hope that we're entering a new era of prosecutors, and that
yes.
what's happening is that they're looking, you know, and look, we can't ignore the fact that they're, you know, because of Serial and because of the advocacy of Rabia and, you know, everything that's been done with respect to this case, you know, the HBO doc, everything that the amount of publicity that was involved with it kind of spurred the state on to give a second look in terms of saying, okay, you know what, we're going to actually do a year-long investigation, which they did. So because we're talking about the old guard and the new guard, you know, obviously Mosby, who's the current state's attorney of Baltimore City, was not the prosecutor back in 1999, 2000. It wasn't her deal. So, you know, it's very, very rare to have a prosecutor going back and throwing her predecessors under the bus, essentially, which is really what she did. So, you know, I mean, to me, the hopeful answer is that we're, like I said, we're entering a new era of prosecutors that, you know, if they've made a mistake, and we all make mistakes, we're humans. And, you know, I mean, prosecutors get the information and the evidence that has been collected by the police, and then they evaluate it. And if they think it's a strong enough case, they're going to move forward on it. And sometimes it's, you know, you get it wrong, and there's, you know, there's no harm in that. There's much more harm in keeping an innocent person in prison for maybe life when you've got some smoking gun evidence out there, or there's enough questions in terms of how that original case was prosecuted that it deserves to be looked at. And so that's, you know, that's what I'm hoping the reason was. I'm hoping, you know, and I think because, you know, and I read the motion thoroughly, like several times, and it's really well put together. And what it showed me is that the resources that they typically don't have, like the HBO documentary and Serial and Rabia's book and everything that has been put out there in terms of really digging into this case, they had at their disposal. And those things are compelling. And these, you know, Kim Mosby was present enough to say, you know what, these things are legitimate and I'm going to look into them. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at the evidence as it was presented in the original case. And then I'm going to come to a conclusion whether or not I can trust the integrity of that conviction. And I think she was just being honest. I think she looked at it honestly and said, no, I can't. Like, I've got questions. So I hope that's what the answer is. I mean, if there's some kind of ulterior motive, I'm not aware of what it is. Let's just hope that she's starting a trend that will, really resonate with younger prosecutors as they're coming up in that office, because this is how it should be done. If there's innocent people in jail, they shouldn't have to spend 25 years fighting it in order to get to the point where Adnan's at right now, and it's, so I'm hopeful. Man, it blew me away. Like, I was just stunned because, like, as a criminal defense attorney, I never have seen this ever.
I know. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because this is like this is crazy.
It's mind blowing. Really is. And I just want to kind of inform your listeners, because like all of us, I jumped online, I was on the socials, I was reading everything that everyone's saying. And, when I'm reading kind of layman being like, oh, this is amazing. He's not been exonerated. I just want to be clear about that.
Yes.
Right.
This is not a situation where they're saying, like, and you said it, Lauren, in your intro, they're not saying that they think he's innocent, but what they are saying is they think that the integrity of that conviction is in doubt. And it's in doubt enough that it warrants that they have a new trial. Now, that's where our conversation tonight is going to get very interesting, to see kind of what the procedural, kind of the outlook is going to be with respect to what the judge is going to do. And then once the judge rules, and I have a very distinct feeling about what the judge is going to do, after that, what the state is going to decide to do, especially in light of what we've read in that motion, because basically, it's the defense that's filing this motion. When they're trying to get a motion to, have a convicted, this is typically written by the defense attorney for the defendant, so to have the state writing this is incredibly unusual. It's like, I keep calling it kind of like a unicorn motion, because I've never seen anything like it. It's crazy. And like procedurally, I want to tell you guys, like, I don't know if any of you guys out there have seen the show We Own the City that was on HBO, and it was about the Baltimore City Police, and it was about this the gun trace task force that they had out there that was the most corrupt outfit of rogue cops ever. And it's unbelievable. I think it's a 6-parter, and everyone should watch it. It's done by David Simon, the guy who directed The Wire and Treme and all those great shows. So it's really, really well done. And it's an absolutely true story. And it's just mind blowing. When you talk about corrupt cops, like, these guys were on this gun trace task force, and they were basically, thieves, robbers, and murderers with badges. It's incredible. That spurred the legislature of Maryland to pass this statute in 2019, which allowed the state to file a motion to vacate a conviction, because they did not have the ability to do that prior to 2019. So the Maryland legislature went after that, because there were so many cases where the gun trace task force was putting innocent people in jail just because they could, and because it was used to cover up their misdeeds, that the legislature said, man, we have to be able to create an avenue for the state to be able to vacate these convictions without the defendant having to go through the Post-Conviction Relief Act process, which, as you can see in Adnan's case, man, we're sitting on 22 years,
Yeah.
I mean, like, in his case procedurally, by the way, was dead. Like, he had run through his appeals. Like, this was like a breath of like life into his case. Like, I don't even know if his attorneys, I mean, they must have been talking with them like constantly in terms of the new state's attorney when she came in for the city of Baltimore, and just been like working her like a rented mule, saying, you got to look at this, you got to go in. And they finally broke through. And then, it's like you have these waves of young prosecutors come in where, the assistant the assistant state's attorney that signed off on the document, that Becky Feldman, she's probably like a young woman who listened to Serial. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like back in the day, and was like, this is a case I've always wanted to fucking look at, and let's look at it. And she talked her boss into looking at it, and they did, and they found a bunch of holes. And so that's kind of where we're at. But like, I'm like super excited to see which way it's going to go.
It would kind of be like if I were president, if I was elected president, the first thing I would want to know is what happened at Area 54. Area 51?
51.
Yeah, I think it's Studio 54, Area 51. I kind of want both. But no.
Man, are you showing your age?
No kidding. No kidding, right? So I guess, when she took over this case, if she maybe was younger and she knew a lot about Adnans, maybe this is one of the things she's like, look, I want to look at this and see if everything I heard about it is correct. So that's where you were kind of going with us. Maybe she listened to Serial and was like, I got to get in there and look at this. And it was one of those things that she looked into it and her eyes were really open. Yeah. I think that's really awesome.
100%, man. Like, I think that's exactly what happened with it for certain. And by the way, not to get into any politics of it, but like when Trump came into office and like one of the first things he did was start the Space Force. You know what that told me? Because like, I'm like you, Ken. If I was ever president, the first fucking thing I'm doing is saying, bring me into the alien shit. I want to see all the alien shit.
Exactly.
I was like, fuck all the rest of it. Bring me to the alien shit. And when he came out and said, you know what, we need to start a Space Force, that told me that everything that we've thought about Area 51 and aliens is true. Because Trump can't he can't contain himself like that. Like him saying, holy shit, we need a space army. That told me everything, So that was just an aside. So I thought it was funny when you said that, because I've always thought I'm like, man, like as soon as he started the Space Force, I was like, yeah, all right, there we go. Like that confirmed it. Because most other presidents can just keep their mouth shut. You knew Trump was like, holy shit, man, why don't we have a space army? So, all right. But so I agree. I think that's exactly what happened with this. And I think we're all better off for it. So do you want my prediction on what I think the judges? So procedurally, what's going to happen now? So the state has filed this motion. The beautiful thing about this that's much different than, say, like what's happened procedurally with Adnan, he actually won he won one of his appeals, and they granted him a new trial back in 2016. Okay. And then the state had the right to appeal that decision. So that was like, every state has different appellate court names. So, when they won in the special appeals court, I think it's called down there, which is like the lowest level of appeals court. And they said, look, we're going to grant you a new trial. The state then appealed that, and it got upheld initially. And then at the highest level, which was the Maryland Court of Appeals, they then said, you know what? No, one of the issues was waived because you didn't bring it up in your first post-conviction act. And then the other thing that they found, that it didn't rise to the level that it required a new trial. So at that point, what happens is that Adnan's attorneys say, okay, well, we're done in Maryland. We've run our appellate course through Maryland. We thought we were so close, because everyone was really excited in 2016 when he was granted a new trial. That got overturned by appeal. So then ultimately they get shut down. And what happens at the end of the day is Adnan's lawyers go to the Supreme Court of the United States, because that's typically your last resort in terms of, the appellate process. And it's really hard to get a case heard in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. It just is. They take very, very few cases, unless there's a novel issue that needs to be decided by them. They're typically it's called writ of certiorari. So they denied writ on that. So they're saying, we're not going to hear it. So from that point forward, his appellate process in the case was done. So he was like through. So when your appeals process is done, you're kind of left with one thing. There's one avenue left, and it's called the Post-Conviction Relief Act. Now, those are petitions that are filed that are very similar to appeals, but they're not appeals. And typically what you need for a Post-Conviction Relief Act petition to succeed, which are also very difficult to win on, is that you need newly discovered evidence. All right. And so they had kind of run through that process as well. And, they had the witness who had said that Adnan was in the library with her. Okay. And, on that day at 1:30, and that they had discussions, which threw the whole monkey wrench into the state's timeline. And she was never called by Adnan's defense. So like those things all existed like initially, but they just weren't enough. So like for all intents and purposes, his case was dead. Like he was looking at the rest of his life in prison. So this was like just an absolute godsend, for him. And really what I think is going to happen, I don't think that there's any way that the judge is going to deny the state's motion because it's so rare. Now it turned out, like I started digging in Mosby, that the state's attorney for the city of Baltimore has done 7 of these. So she's done one of them in front of this exact same judge where she's asked for the conviction to be tossed out. So I feel with great confidence that this is actually going to happen. Now, again, when the conviction gets tossed out, that does not mean that he's exonerated. Okay. So what it means is that the state then has 30 days to kind of shit or get off the pot. They can either nolli pros, which is just a Latin term for dismiss the charges against him. Now, with a nolli pros, that still doesn't mean that he's completely off the hook because they can recharge him. It's very rare. Typically, when the state nolli pros a case or dismisses it like that, they don't come back after him. But what I think is kind of going on here now is I think that the prosecutors and they've probably enlisted the help of the police again at this point to go back out and reinvestigate a lot of things that they've discovered in this past year in terms of their internal investigation. And they're going to see if they can build a case against one of these 2 other alternate suspects, because it must have been a situation for Mosby where she's sitting there thinking, well, this Adnan's been in the joint for 22 years. Like, I don't want him sitting here while we're still like continuing to investigate this. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to ask the judge to dismiss or to vacate the conviction. I'm going to ask him to release him on his own recog to get out. So he's at least out. And then they're going to figure out what they're going to have to do, and it's either going to be, they're going to nolli pros and not try him again, or they could decide to retry him again if they think that there's enough evidence. If they think that there's enough evidence, then they could retry him. Based on that motion that I read that they prepared, I'm not seeing it because they're boiling it down to 2 things. They're boiling it down to the cell phone tower data, from the records that kind of triangulated him into that area. And they're basing it on Jay Wilde's statement, which is insane.
Yeah.
And it ultimately they found that the cell phone data stuff was junk, and there's this, kind of this portion. I know you're going to probably want to ask me a little bit about Brady violations and things of that nature and ineffective assistance of counsel, kind of what happened at trial. But with respect to what went on with the cell phone tower things, like Adnan's trial attorney didn't even cross-examine their expert on that, and that's like when you're talking about 2 pieces of circumstantial evidence, one being the cell phone tower locations and the pinging of the phone. And we're talking about 2000. Okay, we're talking flip phone shit. We're not talking about smartphones. This is not like a different era. So it's completely different technology. And then you've got this dude coming with like this story. In my thing, let me ask you guys a question. Where do you guys sit on this? Like, what do you think? You guilty or innocent on Adnan?
I'm a line rider. I ride the line. It's tough.
Yeah.
The only issue, I think I lean more towards guilty only because the faith that I have in the justice system. But I also lean more towards, I do not think there was enough evidence to convict him. I think there's a lot of circumstantial evidence. And I think he was somewhat misrepresented as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty much on the same page as Ken. I've always leaned more toward guilty, even well, believe it or not, I have never listened to Serial, and I
How dare you?
And I won't listen to it just because I'm the only one ever in a room that can say that I never listened to Serial. But I did read Rabia's book, and it takes a lot to convince me. But then on the other hand, I hate to say it, I have very little faith in the justice system. Bob, I know we talked a little bit about my background I worked in the clerk of courts for a while in the criminal department. Then I worked for a defense attorney, and they get it wrong more often than people know.
Yes.
So that bothers me a lot. But as far as Adnan, I guess I say I leaning toward guilty, but I'm totally open minded. Change my mind, and I will absorb whatever you want to give me, and I will listen. And if he's innocent, then I think that's great that he's getting out and that everything's going to be good and great.
It's the hardest thing that I have trying to reconcile, and I was talking to my wife Allison about this recently, is what is the motivation of Jay Wilde's coming up with that fucking story?
That was my question. Like, why would he make all that up?
Why did right? It's like one thing. Like a lot of times you'll get guys that pick up charges and, they'll say, well, you got to give me something. You got to give me something in order to be able to get out of these charges. And then, that's where they get these guys to turn state's evidence and they start ratting on people and shit like that. I wasn't hearing about any kind of like underlying charges that he got picked up on anything, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, because a lot of times what happens if you are going to get a guy that you pick up on something and you're trying to get something bigger out of it. And that's a real thing in Baltimore. And that's a real thing in any big city where they're always trying to get an upgraded charge in terms of, they want a bigger case than the case that they snared. So they'll always try to leverage the power that they have over that potential defendant by saying, look, you got one way out of this thing, dude. Like, and if it's a drug deal, or it's like, like a low level drug deal, they're going to say, we need your guy. Who's your supplier? The only way you're getting out of this and not doing 8 years in the joint is by turning on that guy. So, and that happens like in terms of snitching, you're not going to have a very effective snitch if they go ahead and charge him, because once you charge somebody, you as a former clerk of the court, that goes into the system once you're charged. And that means the public at large can see it. So a lot of times if a guy gets picked up on a charge and this guy's going to say, all right, well, I can give you something huge. I'm going to give you something fucking huge right now, but you have to promise me you're not going to charge. And they understand that. They understand the fact that, they're not. And in this case, if that's what happened with Jay Wilde, if they picked him up, because he was a weed dealer, there's no question about that. Like it's like, and this is way before weed was legal. This is back when dudes were doing serious time on weed bids. So, exactly. This is a situation where if he got picked up on a weed bust and they're like, you're looking at 5 to 10, sucker, do you got anything that you can give us? And he comes up with this shit. Like if that happened to coincide with him getting busted on a weed charge and he's like, oh shit, well, like Hae Min's gone, Hae Min's been disappeared. And he comes up with this fucking story because it's like the story's unbelievable. And, yes, his facts are different every time he tells it, which always, that's like a defense attorney thing. We're always trying to pick holes in the story. Why were you inconsistently telling the story every single time? You didn't know all the facts and things like that. So, I don't know. I think that he didn't do it just because more of who he was as a human. Like I just like everyone that knew that guy, it wasn't his personality. He just wasn't that guy. He wasn't a violent guy. Like everyone he went to school with is like, you got the wrong guy. Like the guy that I've known for like my whole life is not a guy that's capable of murdering somebody in cold blood and dumping the body, especially somebody that he loved, and I'm just, so I don't know. I've always felt, I've always fallen on the side of that he's not the guy. I think it's one of these other two cats.
I would have to agree with that. The one thing that blows me away was the part of the story where Jay Wilde said that Adnan showed up and popped the trunk and said, hey, look at the body in my trunk.
Right.
That's when I was like, wait a minute. I just don't, I just can't envision myself or envision someone doing that, mentally. And the other thing too is the changing the story. I think a lot of it, and I think one of the problems was the prosecutors weren't getting what they wanted out of him. So I think maybe they used that a little bit as leverage, and I think they kind of changed his story for him. And I think that's why I kind of ride the line. I mean, they were directing him. There's no way that this, like you said, he changed the story, but I think he just kept changing the narrative until they finally said, "Oh, yep, that's it. That's what we want."
Exactly.
Right there.
Exactly. And that happens all the time in interrogations.
I was going to say, I think, look at Brendan Dassey.
Dassey, exactly.
I mean,
that's a perfect example of, that they led him down the primrose path of exactly what they needed him to say, and they got him to it without putting the exact words in his mouth, but coming right to the edge of saying exactly what they needed him to say, and it sounds like it was similar in terms of what was going on with, the Jay Wilde's thing. So that was the one thing that always kind of stuck in my craw. I've been doing this from the criminal defense attorney side for a long time, and just for somebody to not have any reason to come up with this story is always the problem I have. If I've had the misfortune of handling aggravated sexual abuse cases, and I've got young children that have made an outcry against somebody abusing them, I'm always well, why would these kids lie? And there's always there's always the argument that if you had an ugly divorce or you've got an ugly, baby mama, baby daddy situation, that the story could have been fed to the kid. But, most of the times that's just not what happens, and so it's that same concept. What is that kid's motive to lie? And what is Jay Wilde's motive to lie? And not only did he lie, he pled out. He ended up taking a plea on that thing,
Well,
so
here's something maybe off the wall. What if Jay was actually one of the suspects?
Right.
I mean he could have been involved and made up all this shit against Adnan to take attention away from himself. He didn't really take it. He did, like you said, he just pled out, but
he knew her.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. That makes more sense than anything else. That's the only rational explanation, is either he's the guy or he's one. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he very well, because they were very protective of not releasing these two guys' names, and I kind of dug through everything again to try to see if I could figure out who the hell they were. I actually watched the HBO for Parter again today to see, mainly because I wanted to see if I could discern who the hell these two suspects are, to see if they were ever on the radar, and they're not in there unless it, so because that's, to me, the only rational explanation for why he would do that. Because ultimately, and he's because Adnan, apparently he had made the statement that back then he was one of the only cats that had a cell. This was back again, 1999. Not everybody had cells back then, So he's people would use my cell phone all the time, because it's always been the story that Jay had both his cell phone and his car that day, and that he was driving around with his cell and he was in his car, so it's I don't know. It's always been a fascinating factual pattern to me, and I'm super curious to see what the state's going to do with it. They have time limits.
Exactly, and we never knew exactly where Jay Wilde's phone pinged, did we?
No,
a weed dealer had to have a phone.
There's no way, or at the very least a pager.
Something,
back in '99, man, that was pager time. You got the 911. I need a bag of weed. That was the predecessor to the cell phones, were the pagers. But I don't know. I don't know if Jay had a cell phone or not. If Jay had a cell phone, then that makes it even more bizarre that he had Adnan's phone. You know what I mean? Why would he, if he had his own cell, why would he have Adnan's phone? Like, cause I was under the impression it was kind of like the community phone. Like all his friends would be like, yo, can I use your cell phone? And he'd be like, sure, So I don't know. But, like the thing with me, and I don't know him personally, but, I know enough people that are pretty close to the case that, he seems like he was like not that guy. Like people just, I've been doing this a long time in my career, and, I've represented some awful human beings. And, typically you can tell, like a sociopath, it's tough to hide it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, there's exceptions to the rule always, but for the most part, most people, if they're a sociopath, which I think whoever would strangle somebody, kind of in cold blood in the middle of the day is a bit of a sociopath. It's tough to hide, and just everyone that knew Adnan, as a young man growing up, he just didn't seem to be that guy at all, so it's so out of character. And like, I'm not buying that, he was so enraged that she was dating this Don guy that, he would kill her. Like, it's just, it doesn't add up to me.
Well, and I had heard something, this was probably years ago, and I can't even remember where I heard it, and I don't know if it's even true, but I heard that Don had gone on and murdered someone else, murdered another woman later on, years later.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
I did not hear that, dude.
Well, I did, and
that's quite a smoking gun.
It's probably just a rumor, but I know that I heard it. I don't know if it's true or not, but
wow, I am definitely digging into that as soon as we're off this, because
let me know what you find.
I was like I said, I watched the 4-parter again today, and I was struck by the little amount that they had Don's recordings on that particular documentary, that he seemed like a really weird dude to me. Like there's something seemed off with him. Like, honestly, like, it's like
agreed.
like there was something off with him. And when one of Hae Min's like friends was trying to like kind of do her own investigation into Don, and she kind of reached out to him via social media, like maybe Facebook Messenger or something. They started communicating, and at some point it turned into a phone conversation. And then at some point, this guy's like saying that he was like, wanting to get physical with her. Like he wanted to have a relationship with this friend of Hae Min's, which I thought was really, really weird. And then the guy just kind of vanished, like down in North Carolina, like, just up and vanished. So yeah, I'm gonna look into that, because that guy gives me a super creep vibe, and I'm pretty good at like sniffing out creeps.
Yeah, that's kind of what you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, I try the best I can.
So can I ask you some technical questions?
I would love that
for our listeners.
Yes,
just so they understand what's going on. The first thing I wanted to ask you about is the state is requesting that Adnan be released on his own recognizance. Now, what does that exactly mean?
So, like, typically you're going to have one of two things happen in a case. And typically this happens in the beginning of the case. When somebody is arrested, they're either going to be given a bond, unless it's like a murder case and they find that, you're a danger to society or you're a flight risk, and the judge says, I'm going to go no bond on this, and I'm not going to give you the opportunity to be out pre-trial. Because remember, again, the Constitution says that every defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty. It doesn't seem like that the way that it plays out, especially because everybody is, typically detained prior to trial, especially for higher level felonies. It seems like you're guilty until you're proved yourself innocent. That's kind of the way it actually is played out, unfortunately. But so what a recog means is he doesn't have to post any money, that they're going to let him out without having to post any money, and he's going to be able to be free with, I'm sure they'll have him on like home monitoring.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Like he's not going to be able to run around and like fly to Europe and, do all kinds of crazy shit, but he'll be out of the joint. And like compared to where he's been for the past 22 years, I'm sure he'll be ecstatic about it. and he'll be able to move about, but he'll have probably an ankle monitor on him, and they'll have GPS on him just to like track him, up until the point the state's going to have to make a decision, so that, and like I said, that's going to happen in relatively short order, like they're like the statute in Baltimore, I looked it up, says, they got 30 days to either nollie pros the case or to advise the judge as to what they're going to do. Like if they're going to say, like what they might do is they might say, okay, well, we're going to retry him. Okay. And the judge will say, okay, well, then we're going to set it for trial. And then they set it out. It typically takes, 6 months to a year, sometimes longer to get to a trial, even for a case that's already been tried. It's new attorneys. It's going to be, new prosecutors. Yes, they're familiar with the facts, but they're going to be saying that they're still developing leads and things of that nature. Because I think ultimately what the state is going to want to do is they're still trying to, really find out whether or not they have enough to even convict Adnan if everything is equal this time, meaning that the cell phone data is probably not going to be put into play because it just like when AT&T is saying, hey, you cannot rely on this geographic data on the cell phone. And that's a disclaimer that they gave. And that was one of the beefs with his lawyers, that she didn't even challenge the expert that the state put on, that the fact that, hey, okay, I know that you're saying that this is where he was, but what about this statement from AT&T that says you can't rely on this? It's not reliable. So like that's not going to be part of the play. So it's going to be left to Jay Wilde's. Like they haven't developed any new evidence against Adnan. That I know.
I think that we need to put this in here just for any of our listeners who did not know this. But Adnan's lawyer was disbarred 3 or 4 years after the trial because I guess she was just a garbage lawyer.
Trash.
She had so many complaints to the bar from not just Adnan, but like all her clients.
Yeah.
So he was obviously did not get proper representation in his original trial.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of like what, when you're a state's attorney or a prosecutor, that, that's what you're thinking about in terms of like, can I prove the case? Because that case was always, it's strictly circumstantial, meaning there's no direct evidence, meaning there's no forensic evidence that links Adnan. Like they didn't find his skin cells under her fingernails. They didn't find any of his DNA on her body. They didn't find his hair. You know what I mean? And he had been in her car, you know what I mean? Probably hundreds of times during their relationship, so it's one of those things where
the only thing they found was like a handprint on a map or some shit, I think is all they found.
Right. And like that's easily explained, because they were in a dating relationship, that's like anytime you've got like a domestic murder where, like a husband has died or a wife has died, DNA is basically useless unless you have a third party's DNA, because the husband's DNA being on his wife is not unusual. They live together, they sleep in the same bed, but with this, they didn't have any of that forensic kind of direct evidence against them. And it's all a circumstantial case, which basically leaves them with Jay Wilde. And based on what Mosby wrote in this particular motion, she doesn't have much faith in that testimony or his story at all. So I think what they're going to do, if they say that they're going to retry, Adnan, then I think that they're going to use the time from when the judge sets it for trial to continue to investigate. I think that they really like one of these two other suspects, but I don't think that they have enough right now to charge them.
Well,
and it's tough because it's like you're like it's 20 years after the fact. You know what I mean? It's like talking about some cold shit, and the DNA came back. And unfortunately, they didn't really find anything that was usable. They found some trace DNA under one of her fingernails, but it didn't provide a sample that was strong enough in order to bring it into a court and have it be admissible. So,
well, I mean, if they did say, yes, we're going to retry him, they still have the option over time to drop the charges.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what like that. That's what I'm saying. That's their move to say, okay, we're going to retry him, all the while knowing they're going to nollie pros it like on the day of trial, but that buys them months and months and months. It gets him out of the joint because they have a feeling that he might not be the guy, but they don't have enough evidence right now to try to charge either one of these other two guys or both of them. And they're going to say, okay, like we don't feel, because like I said, they can nollie pros the case or, just dismiss the case against him and then rebring it. But like it rarely happens like that. I think the more and like the overarching theme of this, the thing that we can never forget is that we're dealing with like Hae Min's like parents, like the victim's family is still here. And Mosby said in her press conference, she's like, I went to them and I talked to her mother and I explained like why we're doing this and what's going on. And we're not so sure that they have the right guy. And then that's not justice for you. That's not justice for your daughter. We want to make sure that we got the right person on this thing. And, at least what Mosby's saying is that the family is okay with it, that they want justice. They want true justice. If it turns out that they try Adnan with whatever evidence they have and they convict him again, well, then, that's going to be sufficient, because we know for a fact Mosby's going to try. If they try him again, they're going to try him by the book. There's not going to be any shady shit, and if they get a conviction on that, Mosby's, she's going to be able to sleep at night. She's going to feel like, look, this is the evidence I provided them and the jury heard it. And, that's where it's going to lay. So,
Well, Bob, in your opinion, do you honestly think that there's enough? I mean, you've listened to Serial. I'm sure you've done research into this case. Do you think there's enough for her to take this to trial? Or do you think she's going to be like, look, I don't have enough? Because we've investigated, I've investigated, that's kind of stupid to say, but we've looked into a lot of cases. And I guess Lauren does do some investigation. There's like 3 or 4 cases that I think there's enough information to take it to trial, but I don't think there's enough evidence for a conviction. So do you think there's possible that she just says, look, we can't take this to trial because we don't have enough evidence for a conviction. We have enough to arrest him. We have enough to say, yeah, we think he did it, but we can't convict him with the information we have.
No, I don't. I don't think there's nearly enough evidence. I don't even think there's enough evidence to, frankly, to win a probable cause hearing. Like essentially all they have is Jay Wilde's. They really don't like that cell phone data just is not, it's not usable. It's not reliable. It's not like they cannot pinpoint where he was. And then in light of all the other evidence that's come out with respect to, like the one girl who was like, and I forget what her name is offhand, but she originally had told the police that Jay Wilde and Adnan had come over to her house the night of the murder at around 6:00, or maybe a little bit earlier, like 4:30 or 5. Went over there, we're kind of hanging out. Adnan gets a phone call at 6:00 and says, "I got to go," and jets. And so when HBO did the documentary, they went to the college. I think she was at University of Maryland, like Boston, like the Baltimore campus, and they got her class schedule. And it showed that she was actually in an evening class. She had a scheduled evening class for that night. And she's like, well, I never would have missed class, so I obviously screwed up my dates. So that must not have been the night that they were over here. That's kind of a big deal because like that's all attacking the timeline that the state has in terms of, and they honestly don't know when Hae Min was killed. It took them a month to find the body.
Right.
That's one of those, like, it's always been kind of assumed that that's when she was killed. Clearly when she doesn't show up to pick up her cousins from daycare, which, sounds like something that she would never not do, that sent up the red flags that something had happened to her. So I think that based on that, but somebody could have had her captive for 2 weeks, doing whatever the hell they're, what I mean? It's like, we don't know. It's like, we just, are all assuming that what we've been told by law enforcement, because this is the theory of the case that they created, is accurate. But the fact of the matter is they have no evidence to support any of that. We're just going based on a story and a timeline that they created that now we see is completely unreliable. So like there's a lot out there. So yeah, Ken, to like answer your question, no, I don't think there's nearly enough to get them convicted. The problem is from the state's perspective, how do you answer to the family, to Hae Min's family, if they're like, all right, well, we just don't have enough to go back on Adnan, and we just don't have enough to try to charge either of these two guys who we think are the guys, because that's always the thing. Like cops, when they get in that situation, and I think it was either Jerry Buting or Dean Strange, and like in Making a Murder, one of Avery's lawyers said it, and I've always loved when he said it. He's like, cops don't frame innocent people; they frame the people that they think did it, and that's true. Like they're not just picking people out of thin air and saying, oh, they're framing the guy that they know in their heart of hearts is the guy, and they just don't have the evidence to get him under arrest. And it's exactly what happened with Gacy. It's like they knew Gacy had killed Peast, but they didn't, like in the 10 days that they hounded him, they didn't get the evidence. So they had to create it and make it happen and make that link between Gacy and Peast so they get him under arrest. And, thank God they did. The guy was a fucking monster. So, had they not done that, he would have gotten caught at some point. I'm pretty convinced about that. But, we could have lost a couple more kids. So, yeah, I honestly don't think they have enough to go back on them. I really don't, unless they've uncovered something that they didn't disclose in this. But if they did, why are they writing this motion? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like that makes no sense. Like, everything that they developed in this motion, this motion is so powerful in that it's basically making any argument that a defense attorney would make to get Adnan out. You know what I'm saying? Like this is read like a defense attorney wrote it, not a prosecutor. That's what I'm saying. It's like an insanely amazing motion. It blows my mind, really.
Yeah, there was something that they submitted. I think they submitted like the information regarding the Brady violation, didn't they? I mean,
totally. So because they were the only ones who knew, Ken. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing about a Brady violation. And in case you guys out there are like exactly clear on what a Brady violation is, essentially what it is, it comes from, and oddly enough, it's the Maryland case. It's Brady versus Maryland, and it's a famous case. And kind of the way how precedent works is, when somebody gets arrested for something, they get charged and they get convicted, and they say, hey, you know what, I want to appeal it. And then it gets appealed, and the attorney for the defendant makes all kinds of issues from, based on what happened at trial. They say, okay, this was wrong, that was wrong, this was wrong, that was wrong. So one of the things that happened in Brady versus Maryland is that one of the prosecutors did not tender evidence to the defense that was exculpatory, that tended to show that his client was innocent, over to the defense prior to trial. And somehow the defense attorney became aware that particular evidence existed. And so when they appealed it, they went to the court and said, look, and that went up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And they said, look, hey, this guy had exculpatory evidence that he didn't turn over. That's like unbelievably wrong. That is not justice. The Supreme Court agreed with them. So they created this like that. So when you're hearing about a Brady violation, it basically means that the prosecution has suppressed evidence from the defense. And the evidence is either going to be favorable to whether or not the defendant's guilty, or, the punishment of the defendant. And it's also got to be material to the issue. So meaning, like, it's got to be, in this situation, it was that they didn't tender the alternate suspect information over to the defense. And in a case like Adnan, where you have a completely circumstantial case, you really need to be able to point the finger at somebody else, because otherwise all you're left with is reasonable doubt. And as a defense attorney, I abhor having to rely on, oh, they didn't prove their case. That's not what you want. Like, as a defense attorney, I want to be able to say, okay, it wasn't my guy because it was that guy. You want to be able to point the finger at somebody else. And so when the state didn't tender it over to the defense, that's a massive bribe. Like that changed the entire strategy that the defense was going to use. Now, I have no faith that the lawyer that ended up representing him at trial would have been able to use it properly anyway. But, you know, at the end of the day, to not have that option to be able to point the finger at somebody else is massive, because ultimately what it boiled down to is her saying, okay, they didn't prove their case. This is all they have. That's not beyond a reasonable doubt, you know? And so that's what a Brady violation is. And that a massive one happened in this, because the biggest part of the Brady violation is that once, you know, in one of the suspects, they had him come in for 2 different polygraph tests. And first one, they found that he was being deceptive in his answers. And the guy said, oh, you know what? I'm anxious. Like I'm like, my mind is somewhere else. I want to retake this thing. And the cop said, okay, that's fine. Cause they were already tunnel vision on Adnan at that point. Like, you know, when cops develop tunnel vision and they think that he's the guy, they don't really give a shit. They're trying to clear these guys just so they don't have to deal with this shit down the road like this. And so the guy comes back in and they give him a different version of the polygraph. And then, so what the state did is they had their experts look at what this guy was given on the second test, who was a polygraph expert. And he's saying that they shouldn't.
Mommy!
No, keep going.
Hold on one second.
Keep going. I'm listening.
Is that a human or a bird?
No, that's her daughter's ringtone. I got to tell you.
Oh my God.
I
That's
get my
amazing.
ass chewed every single time we're recording and my phone goes off. I mean, ripped.
That was it scared the shit out of me.
So me too. Oh goodness.
So where are you guys at down in Florida?
We're in Naples, Florida, Southwest Florida.
Right.
Yeah.
All
We're
right.
as far south as you can go on the West Coast. Everything south of us is basically just swamp.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was out in Tampa about 6-8 months ago. It's pretty nice out there. I think we were in like Tampa and like Clearwater. That's close to Tampa, right? I think that's where we were staying.
yeah. Tampa, Clearwater area. The Clearwater is more towards the central, but Tampa is down on the West Coast. Her sister lives in Tampa. It's a beautiful area too.
Yeah, it is. It's like a beautiful town. We were so like, because we typically do like I got a bunch of buddies. We do like a Super Bowl trip every year. We'll always go to like a different location, not necessarily where the Super Bowl is be playing. We just go to like a city and we all go watch the Super Bowl somewhere. So we happened to go to Tampa, and then we went to like, so one of the nights, like somebody's like, oh, you got to go to like, I think it's called Ybor. Is that right?
Ybor City.
Ybor. And like, so I had a friend who was living down there, and I, like, we were in there. I was like, man, this shit looks kind of rough. Like it looks like kind of like it could be a little bit of a rough area. And like, so I call my one buddy who lives down here, and I'm like, he's like, yeah, we're in Ybor. And he's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing there? He's like, you're gonna get killed there. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
he's like, yeah,
exactly.
He's like, dude, this is like, that's some fucking like hardcore, like, you know, gangster shit in there. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, trust me. It's like, y'all need to get the fuck out of there. Like that night when we got home, there was like a shooting, like an hour after we left. So I was like, wow, yeah. So that was my
Ybor is definitely, it's the Baltimore of Florida.
Yeah, I did not know that. Like whoever gave me that tip gave me like some fucking bad intel, man. So I was like,
well, can I say that Ybor wasn't always like that? 20 years ago, Ybor was like party town. It was just bars and music and tattoo shops, and it was a fun place to go, like college kids and everything. But I guess it's gotten a little rough.
Yeah, I think that was probably the last time my buddy who told me to go there had been there. You know, he was going on like some old shit, you know. But so yeah, so you know, the Brady violation shit's crazy, and I think that ultimately, what my gut is on this thing, what I think is ultimately going to happen with it is, I think the judge is going to grant the motion first and foremost. I think that he's going to vacate the conviction. I think that he's going to release Adnan out to the public. And I think ultimately, I think the state's going to nolly pros the case. I do. And I really think they're trying to develop a case against one of these two guys because, frankly, on the face of it, they look as viable, if not more viable, than Adnan does.
Now, do you think they're going to release the names of who these suspects are?
I think as soon as they arrest one of them, they will, because they won't have any choice.
I'm chomping at the bit to start researching that.
So I know.
You think another arrest is possible coming up? Maybe
I do. I think that it's going to be one of these two guys. And like when you read through the motion, they address the DNA that they've been testing recently, and that's like actually the second page of the motion. And I want to read you exactly what it says. So they said on March 10th of 2022, the state and the defense filed a joint petition for post-conviction DNA testing on the victim's clothing. Because obviously in 1999, 2000, the technology was not anywhere near what it is now. Now we can get trace evidence, trace DNA, touch DNA. It's a completely different ballgame. So specifically, the parties sought to have an independent test or an independent lab test the clothing for touch DNA, which procedures were unavailable at the time of trial. The items being tested in 2022 were not previously tested in 2018, with the exception of the victim's fingernails. So this is the part that's interesting, though. It says that trace level male DNA was detected on the victim's right fingernail swabs, the right fingernail clipper swabs, and the victim's shirt swabs. The swabs from the right fingernail and shirt were analyzed with genotyping kits that targets male Y chromosome STR DNA. However, no useful typing results were obtained from this analysis. Now, that means that they got a partial profile. All right. That doesn't mean that they didn't get shit from it. That means that they got because I don't know if you guys ever talk about DNA and shit in your cases. So, they had they probably had 6 out of the 14 loci that they were able to have hits on. So it was probably somewhat strong, but not strong enough to be able to bring into a court of law. But it was probably strong enough for them to know that one of these two guys, who I'm sure that because both of them have been incarcerated, so both of them have provided DNA samples. They're in CODIS for sure, both these guys. So I think ultimately what's going to happen is that they got enough of a hit on the DNA that they wouldn't be able to use it in court, but it got them onto these guys, and they're investigating the fuck out of these two dudes. They're going to try to go back as far back as they can in terms of cell phone data, whatever they can do. And it's tough because it's 20 years after the fact. You're talking about if you don't have the DNA that's strong enough, what other things are they going to be able to do? I guarantee you they're going around questioning all the people that these people associated with, and they're trying to build a case against these guys because one of those two guys showed up at least as a partial profile that's not strong enough to get introduced as evidence, but does tell the state that more likely than not, this is the guy that did it, So I think that's where they're at, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, because the worst thing, we've seen in one case in particular that we covered, probably 3 or 4 years ago, where there was a conviction, and then the sentence was vacated. I can't remember exactly why. Talking about the Ballard case.
Oh yeah.
And he walked out of jail, and that case is still, no one's ever been arrested. It was a double murder, and it's not even listed on the sheriff's on the unsolved cold cases that they usually list on their website. It's just
what grounds did they have to vacate it? Did they?
I'm trying to remember.
Because it's got to, you've got to come up with some really, really strong evidence in order to get them to vacate a conviction. It's super hard to get out of those. It's once you're in.
Remember, it went all the way.
It went all the way up to the Supreme Court, I believe, the Florida Supreme Court. Yeah. And I can't. Oh man, it's bugging me now. I'm gonna have to go back and look.
I'll Google it. What's the guy's name?
John Ballard.
John Ballard. Yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah, because it's those things are so hard to so hard to win. I mean, look at what's going on with Avery. And, Kathleen Zellner's like a beast. I mean, that woman is like really, like she's all in, and like, I don't know who's providing all the money for all the experts, but she's going the whole, throwing the whole ball of wax in there to try to get him because she believes that he's innocent, and that's like, that case is just as fascinating as Adnan's cases to me. It's like, that never made sense to me either. I'm like, the guy's got a documentary crew following him around. He had just been exonerated after spending 18 years in prison. Like, he's got a windfall coming. He's about to win that lawsuit. He was definitely going to probably get $3-4 million bucks. I think he was suing for like 36, but he was going to get millions of dollars. Like, why, unless he's just a complete sociopath, and he could not stop himself, but there was no evidence that that's who he was, and it's like, I don't know, that one doesn't make sense to me either.
Well, that opens up a question for you. I actually have two things that I want to say. Number one, my first question, I guess, to you, is it possible if Adnan's released, or did the prosecution just open up a possibility of a lawsuit for Adnan?
Yes, they do. Which is like it's one of the things that makes this thing even more stunning. It's like if they flat it, like the only thing that can kind of protect them is if they kind of refuse, like he won't be exonerated. If they vacate the conviction and they nollie prosecute, I mean, technically he is exonerated because it's like he hasn't gone to trial and the state wasn't able to prove that he was guilty, but the state was not able. They first of all, they've gotten rid of the conviction. It does not exist in the law anymore. And for all intents and purposes, if they're not going to retry him, they're basically saying that they believe that he's innocent. So guarantee you they're going to have a civil suit on that. There's no question about it. I mean, the guy lost 22 years of his life, so that's what I'm saying. That like everything about this motion is very noble. It was like a really noble thing of her to do, because it couldn't have made her very popular with cops in that city, and it couldn't have made her very popular probably with a lot of politicians, and people that control the purse strings in Baltimore City. So, she's a renegade in there, and
she's
I'm a big fan
upholding
of hers.
Well, yeah, I think most people in the true crime world will be too, but yeah. I think she's upholding, what every standard that she went to law school for.
Exactly. But, that's just not done. I don't know if that's and that is a massive indictment on prosecutors. I'm telling you, I mean, I've been doing this 22 years and I've never had a prosecutor say, oh yeah, we whiffed on this one. We were wrong. Sorry. They just don't do it, and I don't know if that's because they're drinking their own Kool-Aid and they just are so tunnel vision that they can't see beyond what they believe happened. Because like when you're trying a case as a defense attorney or as a prosecutor, I mean, all objectivity is lost, for both sides, for the defense and, the Anthony Garcia that I'm doing in the second season where I tried that case. We put on a hell of a defense. It was a death penalty case. It's my obligation as an attorney, if they're going to try to kill my client, that they're going to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt without question. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that I allowed my client to get killed by the state without them proving it beyond a reasonable doubt. I feel like, I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I mean, that's a massive amount of pressure. That's not just, that's somebody's life, so it's as serious as stakes, I don't know if there's any stakes higher than that, but, yeah, so I don't know, man. It's, like prosecutors that's what I'm saying. I hope this creates a new era, that young prosecutors out there see what she's doing and saying, man, I really respect that. It's I know it's not popular with other people in my office or, but fortunately she's the big boss. She got voted in, because those are elected officials, the head state's attorneys, and she's she's doing things that I'm sure are very unpopular with a lot of people in that state and in that city too. So, she's just kind of like putting it out there, but she did the right thing, because like when you look at it on its face, they might have the wrong guy in there, and it's just
and they have to take a hard look at that, and I think that's where she's really doing good, because that she's getting pressure, like you said, from law enforcement, exactly. Other elected officials, the people in that area. One other thing that I want to say is you said something about, all the money coming in for Kathleen Zellner and all that, but you being a defense lawyer, I think a lot of people don't understand, because they always say, oh yeah, well, this attorney is going to cost me this much money. And oh my God, how much is this attorney costing me? And my defense lawyer is costing so much money. I don't think people grasp the concept of how much time and effort it goes into being a defense lawyer. And if you could just kind of sum it up real quick, like in your season 2, I mean, that's a death penalty case. I can't imagine the hours that you have invested. Not only that is because like you just said, it sounds like you can't even sleep at night because you're constantly thinking.
Oh my God, dude. Like that, like financially, we took the biggest beating that you could possibly take on that case. That case, when you take on a case like that, and Anthony Garcia was a doctor who was charged and ultimately convicted of murdering 4 people over 5 years. So they had him and it was under a revenge theory that he had been fired in 2001 from his residency, and that haunted him in his career up until the point where in 2008 he killed the 11-year-old son of the chair of the department of the pathology department that he was fired from, and the housekeeper. And then 5 years later came back and killed the director and his wife. And it was all based on this theory. And that took 3 years to litigate. And I had to basically shut down my office for 3 years. I could not handle any other cases. The amount of police reports and evidence that they had, and it was all circumstantial, and it was massive. Like we had no time to do anything else. And on top of that, it was in Omaha, so it was in a different state, and I had to move out to Omaha for 6 months, left my kids for 3 of it, and it was and it was a war. I mean, this was a hard fought war. Like I said, this is a death penalty case. It's like you can't just have lawyers going in there and saying, oh well, I'm just gonna go through the motions here and let this guy get convicted. It doesn't work like that. Like no one's serving any real justice or serving any duty that they have to represent their client zealously by doing that. So, we had to go in and fight as hard as we could. And frankly, my client always maintained his innocence. So as a defense attorney, I'm sitting there like, oh my God, this guy's telling me he didn't do this. They don't have any direct evidence. And these were all like brutal stabbing murders with like no DNA evidence at all. Nothing, no forensic evidence at either of the crime scenes. It was incredible. It's like, that's almost impossible in a knife fight to not leave some kind of trace DNA anywhere, so it was like, I just didn't understand, and their timeline didn't work either. We just put together a hell of a defense. So yeah, in terms of like a typical, like a murder case, I'm probably spending 10,000 hours preparing for that. Like when I'm on trial for, like that case, I probably made $5 an hour if I were to calculate the fee that we got paid and how much time we put into that case, and that goes nowhere to like try to like explain the physical and mental toll it takes on the lawyers to try a case like that, because like you said, Kevin, it's all consuming. Like I didn't think about anything else, especially when you're on trial. When you're on trial, you're oblivious to the rest of the world. It's like, it's such a weird dynamic of being a lawyer in a case like that. And, and people have this misconception that everything goes to trial. Nothing goes to trial. 95% of criminal cases are pled out. It's like we, as true crime podcasters, we're always talking about cases that go to trial. Well, it's because they went to trial that they're talking about them. But a vast majority of cases, like I looked at it, it's like 95%. Federal cases, like 97% of them are pled out. So that means that 3% of them actually go to trial. So trials are very rare. That's just, it's like you look at these cases and people are like, oh, people are getting away with this and that. And like the reality is, no, if the cops do their jobs right, if they get the evidence, because most criminals are not masterminds. Most people that commit crimes leave evidence, they leave trails, they leave breadcrumbs for the cops to be able to close these cases. And most of the times the cops do a great job and get the guy. And that's usually when these guys plead out. It's like if I have a client that comes in and tells me, and I never ask, like people always ask me, do you ask your clients if they did it? And the answer is no. But what I do is when I get the evidence in, I review it thoroughly. And then I have my client, and if they're telling me that, because guys aren't coming in and saying, "Oh, you're my lawyer, I'm going to tell you everything that I just did." No one does that. Everyone comes in and says, "I didn't do it. I'm not the right. I didn't do this." So when I have that situation, which is almost 99% of the time, I'll then sit there and say, "Okay, well, this is the evidence they have against you," and I go through it piece by piece by piece by piece. And I say that's they have a very strong case against you, and the likelihood of us winning are slim and none. And that's just me being honest. Like that's the reality. That's what my job is. I'm not sitting here trying to tell guys that I'm going to get them off if I'm not going to be able to get them off. And if the cops have done, like, if I don't have a motion to suppress or a motion to quash or some kind of way to attack with the police work, if the police did their job properly and they got the evidence, that guy's going down 99% of the time. That's a fact of the matter. It's just, there's this misconception that there's, people getting off left and right. It's just not true. It's just not how it is in the real world. That's some law and order bullshit. That's not how it is in the real world.
Well, I can only imagine how frustrating it must be to, like you as a defense lawyer, to take a look at the representation that Adnan got or received rather, and be like, oh my God, I cannot believe that you didn't do this and you didn't do that. I can see, like, for somebody that knows what's going on, how crazy that must have been for you to see all the evidence in the Adnan case and be like, there isn't any.
Yeah. I mean, the only like kind of the only high publicity case that I was more repulsed by was like the lawyer who was representing Brendan Dassey. Like,
oh gosh.
I've never seen a guy. I'm like, when I turned that off after watching the last episode of the first season of Making a Murderer, I'm like, if that guy isn't disbarred, he's like, I'm leaving this profession. I'm like, that guy, like, that is the guy who gives defense attorneys a bad name. I mean, he has his own client giving like basically confessing to some guy. It was unbelievable. So yeah, it's like seeing incompetence like that, and especially if it's like like public defenders get a bad rap, but there's a hell of a lot of good attorneys that are public defenders. The problem is that their caseload is so massive that they just don't have the time to be able to dedicate the time that they like. Look at like the number of people that are advocating for Adnan. And look at how hard it's been to get them to re-look at this case. You know what I'm saying? It's like a majority of guys in prison that are, saying that I didn't do this do not have this kind of groundswell of support.
Right.
And, people out there fighting for their freedom. Like, you get like your West Memphis 3, your Adnans and, your Stephen Averys, and that's about it. I mean, if you think about it, like how many cases do you know of that you can name offhand where, and prisons are filled with innocent people,
Tommy Ziegler.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
So it's just, it's tough. I mean, the reality is, like I've said, those post-conviction relief acts and appeals, like once you're convicted, saying, "Oh, don't worry about it, we're going to fight it on the, at the appellate level." It's like you just don't win those. They're so hard to convince an appellate, because they're like in the appellate court. You're not bringing new evidence in. You're not retrying the case. Like, people don't understand with an appeal. Basically, all you're doing is you're going in and saying that the trial court screwed up in this way or that way. You're not bringing in new evidence. New evidence comes in those post-conviction relief act petitions, and it's got to be like amazing evidence. Like, you're talking like just smoking gun, DNA evidence that somebody else did it. I mean, like that, short of that, like no matter how compelling it is, it's incredibly hard to get those things overturned. It just is, So yeah, like anytime I see somebody on the front, because I know that. So when I see like an incompetent attorney just handling something that they had no business taking that case, they had no business taking the money from Adnan's family and saying, yeah, I can handle this case. Like that's what pisses me off, because I knew like, like I always tell potential clients, I'm like, ask the right questions when you're hiring a defense attorney. If you didn't do it, you need to be asking not how much do you cost, but how many cases have you won? How many trials have you gone to? Do you know what the hell you're doing in there? Because you get these situations, because there are so few trials, you have attorneys out there that are trying cases that have no idea what they're doing, and she was a perfect example of that. She had no idea that serial was going to come about, because it was 14 years after the fact. That must have been like a nightmare for her.
Right.
Like, oh my God, they're doing a podcast about this case that I butchered.
I think she was already disbarred at that point.
Still, it's still
brutal. Listen, Bob, we need to wrap this up because it's going on an hour and a half now.
Yeah, I know. I'm a talk. I warned you. I'm a talker.
No. This has been great.
I would call you informative, not a talker.
Oh, thanks, Ken. You're a good man.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
But yeah. So if our listeners wanted to find your podcast, Defense Diaries, where would they find that?
Everywhere. We're on every podcatcher out there. Apple, Spotify, Google, all of them. We're everywhere. I just found out, oddly, that we are in Facebook jail. I didn't know it for 12 days. I went on there because funny enough, I have my oldest daughter who's 28. She's running my socials for me these days. And apparently Facebook does not like when you have like serial killer memes on there. So, so we got tossed into Facebook jail and I had no idea. Apparently I'd been in there for like 2 weeks almost. And I'm like, I typed her, I'm like, hey, court, we're apparently in Facebook jail. So, but yeah, no, we're available everywhere. We are a serialized pod. We do one case per season, and we are a super deep dive.
Super duper deep dive.
Yeah, if deep dives are your thing, and it's not everybody's thing, but if it is your thing, I pretty much guarantee you'll enjoy it because we try to make it entertaining and we try to make it informative and a little bit educational as well, to try to kind of tell people a little bit how the legal system actually works, because all of us that kind of consume true crime don't necessarily know how the system really works, and we hear these turns of phrases, of legal phrases, and we don't really know what they mean. We try to explain those to you in a way that's kind of interesting and fun. So,
see that's what I like about your show, because my background as a paralegal, and I know these things, the legal phrases and the Latin words and everything, and I'm always trying to explain them, and nobody ever knows what the hell I'm talking about. So
it's you know what? The funny thing is like I didn't realize how little people knew about the legal system, because when you go to law school and you're in the system, you take it for granted and you just kind of assume that everybody knows what the hell is going on. You lose sight of the fact that lay people, like if I've got a person who's never been arrested and never been in the criminal justice system, I repeatedly, we'd leave the courtroom and the people would be like, I have no idea what any word that anybody just said, what any of it means. So I realized at that point that, normal people that aren't dealing with the criminal justice system don't know a lot about what goes on in there and what terms mean and, what the ramifications are. So yeah, we try to clear that up a little bit in the pod, and, we try to make it interesting at the same time. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah, because if you think you knew all there is to know about John Wayne Gacy, you probably need to tune in because there's some more to know.
Oh, definitely, dude. Definitely. It's just like that. Like, don't even get me started. But yeah, that was unbelievable when we uncovered that. But yeah, it's been fun. Like, and to be honest with you, like I've been doing the law game for 20 plus years, and I was really at the point where I was burnt. It's such a hard profession to kind of like get up and do it every day. over and over and over because you're never off duty. It's like exactly like Ken was saying. It's like I'm never not thinking about it. It's like every other profession, like when people leave work, I think for the most part, they're able to kind of leave work, and they don't have to think about it. That's not to say they don't think about it, if they've got a project that they're working on or something, but I'm talking like every single day, like from the minute I wake up, I'm worrying about shit. When I'm going to bed, I'm worrying about stuff. And it's like, yeah, I forgot to ask you guys if you're clean, if you don't swear, like, I know I've dropped some like,
no, we're explicit.
Okay, good. Cause I have
Lauren was a sailor.
So
yeah, just so you know, she was a sailor, by the way.
Oh, all right, good. Cause I was a truck driver. So that's where I get, so yeah,
a sailor and a truck driver walk into a bar.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, I'm loving the podcast thing though. It's a lot of fun and it's, I'm still able to utilize what I learned, you know what I mean? So that's been really, really cool for me, so it's been a lot of fun and and I get to meet a lot of amazing people like you guys. So I love it. It's been great.
And you're on all the socials, right?
All the socials, yeah.
At Defense Diaries.
Yeah, at Defense Diaries for Facebook and Instagram, and then at Defense_Diaries because some unbelievably had taken it on Twitter. So yeah, but and like frankly, on my Twitter account, that's kind of where I'm most active. Like my Twitter handles Facebook and the Instagram account, and I handle very poorly the TikTok and much more aptly the Twitter account. But yeah. I've got to force myself to do the TikTok. It's just like, I'm too old. It's not my game. I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, Ken,
do TikTok.
Ken's like TikTok famous.
You are?
He is.
Ken, you got to give me the tips, brother. I just don't know what I'm doing.
He's got like some crazy, like 50,000 followers or
That's
something.
That's amazing, dude. That's freaking great.
Like, and then he makes the dumbest videos though.
That's dumb as it. That's it.
That's the secret. That's the secret sauce. I mean, like
dumb.
Yeah. Well, now I'm gonna find you on the talk, man. I'm gonna mimic you. There's it's the sincerest form of flattery is when you copy somebody's shit. So that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah. I just don't put enough content on there, but I feel like I have to. Like it's just there's some pods out there that have exploded because of TikTok, and I'm like, man, really? It's but I don't know. Yeah, we have a lot of competition as podcasts out there. So
it's huge. So
oh my god,
all we can do is kind of work together and try to promote everybody's stuff, especially the good stuff.
Exactly.
I think everybody has a different angle. I think the thing I like about your show is it's got a uniqueness because you have attachment to it. There's cases that we've done and I've covered that I have attachment to because some of the early stuff was in town. And, if you got an attachment to it, you're able to bring a whole different element, which I think is what you're bringing to your show as well.
Yeah. Like for real, like, especially with these first two seasons, I mean, they were like deeply personal for me, so it's been cathartic actually. Like, kind of like I felt like with the Gacy thing, I was able to kind of exercise that out of my life after 40 years, to like literally when we finished that thing, like 36 episodes, it was like a really long podcast. Like I literally started uncontrollably weeping. It was so weird, man. Like at that point I kind of realized cause you never know when you're like living with it like all the time, like how it affects you, you know what I mean? Cause you compartmentalize it and you don't really think about it all the time, but it's always kind of there dormant, So yeah, that's like, and with Garcia, same thing. Like that case is just like, it's crazy. If you guys have not listened to that season, dig into that season. Like
I'm still trying to get through season 1. Don't be mad.
Yeah, it's no, I couldn't be. My father hasn't even listened to the podcast. How could I possibly be mad at you? He's like, I don't know how podcasts work, Bob. I'm like, Dad, I sent you the link up on your phone. Come on, man. So yeah, no, don't worry about it. It's a lot. It's so like, cause we all know people listen to pods in their cars or when they're walking their dogs or,
right.
work, I mean, you have limited times you can listen. And like with me, I'm always guilty of like when I'm listening to my friends' pods, like if I'm walking my dog, like if I start thinking about something, I've then lost like 8 to 10 minutes, like where I didn't hear a word that was said in the podcast because I'm like in my brain. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Oh yeah.
So then I'm rewinding, or my go-to move is I put my phone under my pillow and I fall asleep listening to pods all the time. That's what I do. So, but I typically fall asleep in like 7 minutes. So it's like, you know what I mean? So it'll take me like 15 sleeps to listen to an episode.
That's funny. All right. Well, Bob, thank you so much for joining us and helping us clarify to our listeners exactly what's going on with this Adnan case. And
well, I'm sure that this is something that the true crime world is going to basically watch and sort of, study closely coming up.
Yep. It's super, super interesting to see how this thing's going to play out. No, and thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love your show. And by the way, your cover art is fire. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
It's so good. Like that tomahawk tree is like super dope, man.
One of our fans made that for us. Actually, I love it.
It's fantastic. Awesome. Like, yeah, it's really great. Yeah, and I love what you guys do too, because I love that local flavor. Like a lot of my local, like I've got a lot of friends that, that kind of do local stuff, and you guys obviously know Eric. He does the New Mexico thing, and my friend. Yeah, like I don't know. Did you guys get to meet at True Crime Podcast Festival? Did you meet Kristen Seavey, who does Murder She Told?
Yes.
Yeah. So she's like kind of New England. So like I love that regional stuff because it's like kind of saying it's like it's your stomping ground. You know what I mean? So it's like you could bring more to it than somebody who's just kind of reading off Wikipedia. It's like you have a different flavor. So, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It was a blast. I hope we can do it again.
Yeah. So we're going to do our outro real quick. And this is going to be like one of our off topic uncuts episodes. Totally. So we're just rolling with this.
Yeah. It's good.
So again, find, Bob's podcast, Defense Diaries. And then find him on social medias at Defense Diaries. And then on Twitter, it's Defense_Diaries.
Right.
And I know you're active because you and I go back and forth on Twitter a lot.
Yeah. I love Twitter. It's like, I just like it. I think it's
yeah.
I don't know what it is. I like the fact that I can't be too verbose. Like I enjoy the fact that they limit me. They shut me up. Like, it's like you guys are, as you've seen, like over the last hour and a half, like I can be pretty talky. So like, I like the fact that they limit my characters on that. It's good for me.
No, this has been great. I've really enjoyed this conversation and I've enjoyed learning, and I know that our listeners are going to get a lot out of it as well.
Cool. So I guess that's it, everyone. Thank you. Where'd you go?
I don't know where I went.
Why'd you turn me off?
I didn't. We're still on.
All right, everyone. I think that's going to be it for tonight.
Again, if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
And as always, check out our website for links to all the social media, the merch store, and much, much more.
And please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening and rate and review. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And as always, thank you, Bob. And thank you very much for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Give them 5 stars.